Back with another installment of the MCU Rewatch Review series here today, talking Captain America Civil War, essentially Avengers 2.5 with the cast that they brought in for this movie. Very good movie. A lot of polarizing opinions on it, though, that I've seen over the years from MCU fans. Some people really liking it, some people not liking it so much, calling it overrated. We're going to break it down here today with two very special guests. As always, joining me as always, I'm already botching, we're freaking 20 seconds in, at BR_doctor on the Twitter machine, Chris Mueller. As always, welcome back to the show, dude. How you doing?
Happy to be here.
And we're welcoming on another fellow Bleacher Report writer from the WWE section. For the very first time that we're having him on the phone here today, Erik Beaston. Erik, welcome to the show, dude. How you doing?
Hey, guys. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Hopefully
course.
I can contribute here.
Oh, absolutely. So I know Chris was the one that reached out to you initially about doing this podcast, and specifically the Civil War episode. What was it about this movie that kind of drew you to wanting to talk about it with us here today?
So I would say it probably has something to do with, at least from the experience I've had, my opinion of the film's a little different than most people's that I've at least interacted with, which I'm sure we're getting into here in a little bit. But to me, it's definitely a film that kind of falls in some of the same traps that some of the Marvel movies do. I think the biggest part is the departure of characters for some of them. So I'm sure we'll get into that here in a little bit, but it's just one of them that I couldn't immediately throw everything behind and go, yeah, that was awesome. So
yeah. It's one of those movies.
That's kind of where I'm at with that one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Chris had just said it right before we started recording that it's a great popcorn movie, and I totally agree. There's a lot of issues with it in terms of some of the storytelling and how they just have a lot of characters at once. I mean, we have the friggin' introduction of Spider-Man in this movie, which we'd completely forget about on the surface. And he has a nice role in the movie, but it's like the first time that we're seeing Spider-Man in the MCU. And it's a part of a big movie. It's a very big movie, like I said earlier. It's kind of like Avengers 2.5. We don't have Thor, and we don't have... Hulk's not in, obviously. Oh God, I'm out of order with these movies. I know the last time we had seen him prior to this was in Age of Ultron. He flew off and whatever. So, yeah, no Hulk, no Thor, but to make up for it, you got Ant-Man, you have Black Panther, the introduction of Black Panther as well. How could I forget about that? The introduction of Spider-Man. A lot of good characters. It's a very good movie, but not without its issues as well. So with that being said, Chris, obviously very knowledgeable on the comic book side of things here. Civil War is a huge storyline in the comics. What was your anticipation level for the movie? Do you think it lived up to the hype in your opinion?
Well, in the comics, Civil War definitely takes place over a longer period of time than it does in this movie, so there's a lot of stuff they weren't able to include, including a lot of the Captain Marvel stuff that I think a lot of people were upset about. But I was looking forward to it, for one, because it's always just fun to see the big battle scenes, and when you have, a dozen of the biggest superheroes in the MCU beating the crap out of each other at an airport, it's probably going to be fun. But I think my anticipation level was so high going into this because of Winter Soldier knocking it out of the park so hard that I was like, well, the next Captain America movie really has to step it up if they're going to follow up that movie.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, Winter Soldier was so good, and we talked about it a while ago. Do you think that it continues the trend of the great Captain America movies, or did it fall short just a little bit?
There are places where this movie has issues, but I think overall it's a good entry into the Cap series, and small issues aside, like him making out with his future niece,
yeah,
it definitely achieves the goal of being a great action movie. I think it just, and this may have been an editing thing, there may have been a half hour of footage that got cut from the movie at some point, but there are certain things where it feels like they jumped from point A to point C without really visiting point B at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough. They got to get a lot into just a 2.5 hour movie. So I kind of get it. There's a lot of logic gaps here, gaps in logic with the movie, which again I understand. Again, it's far from a perfect film, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. When I first saw it, I liked it. I honestly did not grow to appreciate it until later on. I think for some people, it's the reverse. Some people really, really liked it early on, and then kind of grew to find it to be overrated or whatever for, a variety of reasons. But I thoroughly enjoyed the movie on the surface. What about you, Eric? Do you think it lived up to the hype in being this, and having the Civil War name? There was a lot of expectations, a lot of hope for this film. Did it reach that level of an excitement for you?
I actually don't think so, and that might be more in hindsight than initially. Mm-hmm. When I walked out of the theater, I think I remember thinking, that's an excellent entry. I really liked some of the psychology that was written into it, but at the same time, in hindsight, I look back now and I'm like, yeah, the big battle scene right in the middle is visually impressive, and the execution was really cool. Everybody had their role there, even War Machine, who's kind of just hanging around most of the movie. But then I kind of go into the thinking that it's a 2.5-hour movie that kind of feels like it's parts of two different movies that were sandwiched together. So we have the Civil War fight, we have the Sokovia Accords, but then later it's more, we disappear Sokovia and we bring in Zemo, who's been manipulating the whole thing, and then it becomes a fight between Captain America and Iron Man over Winter Soldier. So I feel like there's two different, there's the revenge story of Captain America, Winter Soldier, Iron Man / Black Panther, but then there's also this Sokovia Accords mix-up that we have over here that we kind of sort of forget by the end, except for the fact that it splits them up in time for Infinity War, which then kind of disappears the Sokovia Accord thing completely. So it's, in hindsight, when you watch it and you're actually paying attention to what's going on instead of just enjoying it for what it is, I feel like you lose some of that bigness and overall appreciation for the blockbuster popcorn movie aspect of it.
With there being so much, with so much going on in this film, do you think, Eric, that it loses sight at any point of being a Captain America movie? With, the first two movies are all about Captain America. Black Widow was involved in the second one, Nick Fury as well. Do you think it kind of loses sight of being a Captain America-centric film as opposed to just, again, like as a blockbuster movie, as Chris was mentioning, I thoroughly enjoy it. It just feels like the Avengers, but it doesn't exactly feel like a Captain America film at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, I think that's a big problem with it. I think at some point it falls into one of the same traps that some of the lesser. I hold the Avengers, the original Avengers movie, on the highest pedestal as far as a team-up movie go. I think it was perfect. But all of the Marvel movies since then eventually fall into the same category of it's a Tony Stark character development movie first. It kind of loses sight of everything else going on around it. And I think to have it called Captain America Civil War when Tony Stark is as central a figure in it as Captain America, if not more, is, I feel like it was kind of deceiving in title. But, yeah, I do think it loses sight of the fact that it's supposed to be a Captain America movie.
What about you, Chris? Do you feel like it's kind of the same thing where it doesn't it's Captain America in name only, and they do have a lot of, storylines involving Captain America with, Peggy Carter dies, and then he makes out with his niece, which is weird, and then, he's chasing Bucky and whatever. Do you think it loses sight of being a Captain America film at any point?
Well, I don't think it's really a Captain America movie to begin with. It is definitely a Marvel, team movie, and like Eric said, it's very much Iron Man's movie just as much as it is Cap's or Bucky's. So calling it Captain America Civil War, I feel like that was done more to accomplish the fact of we have a trilogy we need to do for Cap, so let's make this the third movie, but we're just going to make it the Civil War movie, when in reality Civil War probably should have been a trilogy in itself. And I think maybe, Eric, that's why you were saying it almost felt like two parts of two movies mashed together, because this has enough story to be a 2 to 3 movie arc, and they really kind of crammed everything in. And because of that, you don't get as much satisfaction as you would if they would have taken a little more time to develop the story, to develop Zemo's character, and maybe give some of the other characters a little more time on screen than they were given in this movie.
Well, your thoughts on Zemo? Do you think he worked? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Erik.
No, I'm just going to agree with Chris. That's exactly it. It seemed to me, watching it, especially, I thought it at the time, even when I enjoyed it originally, and rewatching it, I thought to myself, this seems like they realized that they weren't going to have the Captain America and Iron Man characters to play around with after Endgame. So they're like, oh crap, we really want to do the Civil War story. So let's kind of sandwich that in there at the same time that we're going to like bill it as a Captain America movie, but really not.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it worked on some levels, but overall it was just kind of, some of the stuff they were doing with Captain America and Bucky was very good, but it's kind of lost in the shuffle of everything else going on at the same time. Chris, 2 questions to kind of clear up the comic book side of things. And this might sound like a dumb question, but is Thor involved in the Civil War in the comics or no?
I mean, in the comics, it's like literally everybody.
Okay.
So you have people who haven't even been introduced in the MCU yet at this point who played major roles. And there's also been like 2 or 3 Civil War arcs in the comics at this point. Mm-hmm. So if we're going back to the original one, I do think it was Cap and Iron Man leading the 2 opposing teams, if I remember correctly. And then the second one, it was like Iron Man and Captain Marvel kind of going against each other.
Okay.
But yeah, it definitely had like a little bit from everybody. I couldn't tell you how involved Thor was. I just know that he was there at some point. I don't remember which side he took.
So why wasn't he in this movie? I know at the end of Age of Ultron they were saying, oh, he's off to go find the Infinity Stones or whatever.
Well, they were filming Ragnarok at the same time, I believe.
Oh, okay.
You only have so many contracted appearances for these people, and
yeah.
Hemsworth only wants to eat so much steamed chicken in between movies, so he probably didn't want to get in movie shape again right away.
Second comic book question. Is Bucky killing Howard Stark and Tony's mom in the comics, or is that made up for the movies?
I'm pretty sure that's made up for the movies. I believe Tony's dad died a different way in the comics, but there's also multiple versions of that, because there's the main Marvel universe, which they call Marvel 616, and then there's the Ultimates universe, and then there's a million other random side universes, like the ancient one where Captain America is like a full-on knight with a shield and stuff. So yeah, it's a little muddy, but there may have been some timeline where Winter Soldier killed Howard Stark, but I don't think in the main timeline that's what happened.
Did you like the swerve when it was revealed that he killed Tony's parents? Did you see it coming when they first showed the scene, but from a different perspective at the beginning of the movie?
I didn't see it coming, but it also wasn't all that surprising, because like as soon as they started going down that path, I kind of just assumed like, oh, there's going to be something that causes Iron Man to hate Bucky like on a visceral level. Mm-hmm. And the death of a parent or parents in this case was definitely a good motivating factor. And the fact that they waited so long to tell us how Iron Man's parents died made the reveal a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree. It was definitely worth the wait. I mean, it's a terrible way for them to die, but in terms of the impact that it made with the reveal at the end, I thought it was great. And obviously, it plays into the whole Civil War stuff, with them kind of turning on each other and Captain America already knowing about it, which was even more shocking, and then kind of hiding, defending his best friend. Who does he choose? It's a whole like triple threat storyline here, and it was really cool to see. What about you, Erik? Did you see that big swerve coming with it being revealed that Bucky killed Tony's parents? And what were your thoughts on it?
No, I did not. I didn't see it coming. It was a second part midway through the movie, I think, where they started, if I remember correctly, before the reveal. So there's the opening scene, and I think there's a callback to it midway through where I kind of started to suspect it, but it still had a pretty strong impact, at least in my eyes, as soon as it happened. I know there were, even in the theater, there were plenty of gasps. People didn't see it coming, so it was an effective little swerve right there that I thought worked well, even if other stuff didn't. So, yeah, I appreciated that part.
Did you want to see, Eric, I'll start with you. Did you want to see more of the Crossbones character, who was a big part of what was I going to say? The Winter Soldier movie from 2 years earlier. He's gone. He shows up in the beginning of the movie. He's kind of like the big bad for like 10 minutes before they kill him off. Did you want to see more of the Crossbones character?
I did actually, and I have notes right in front of me, and I said they killed him off quicker than a John Cena TV program.
I love it.
Yeah, so I mean, he was there and he was gone. He jobbed out in 10 minutes, and it was on to the next thing. And I thought they did a great disservice to that character because there were so many logical directions they could have gone in after Winter Soldier with Crossbones, and they marketed him. Like, if you look at the merchandising for the movie and the action figures, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing the Crossbones character. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, he's gone in 8 minutes.
Yeah, it was a little anticlimactic because we don't even see him in full Crossbones. I don't want to say gear, but like in Crossbones mode until this movie, and then he just dies. It was really just the means to an end to kind of show that the Avengers are dangerous and that Scarlet Witch, while killing him, killed a bunch of other people in the building too. I could see why they did it, but the guy deserved to be more than just a filler opponent for the Avengers. What were your thoughts, Chris? Did you want to see more of Crossbones?
Yeah, I would have liked Crossbones to have played a bit more of a role, but I get why they did what they did. They needed a villain in the beginning of the movie for that scene. I don't remember what country they were in when they were fighting him, but I like Frank Grillo, so it's hard for me to watch a movie and see an actor that I really like be underused. But I was happy that they brought him back for Endgame just for a couple of scenes in the elevator and stuff. And I don't think it's impossible that we'll see him again, because even Frank Grillo has kind of teased, like, you never know what Crossbones can survive. And I'm pretty sure if he comes back, it'll be by some weird either time travel or multi-universe thing. But yeah, they could very easily bring him back through a multiverse thing. And I hope they do, because he's an underdeveloped villain that in the comics is like, he's one of Cap's like longest running villains, if I'm not mistaken. So it would be cool to see him brought back and used even for a different hero down the line, because he's a good human villain that he has no inherent powers, but he's smart. He's a soldier who's been through the shit and can mess you up if he needs to, and he just looks cool. Like, that's an awesome costume.
Yeah, he's got some great gear. Do you think he should have been the main villain of the movie over Zemo, and what were your thoughts on Zemo as the main bad guy?
Well, I think Daniel Bruhl did a good job. Zemo as a bad guy was a little underdeveloped as well, and that just comes from this movie being overbloated. And another reason why I think this could have been a trilogy, because they could have devoted like half of a second movie to being Zemo flashbacks or something. Like, and then also, let's be honest, his plot in this movie is too complicated to have actually ever worked. So they make him look a little weird in that respect, because so many random things had to have happened exactly as they happened for his plan to be effective. So I would have preferred to see a lot more of a long planning phase across 3 movies, and then like by the 3rd movie he executes his plan and all goes to hell. But yeah, I like Daniel Bruhl's portrayal of him, and the fact that he's being used again in the Falcon and Winter Soldier series makes me happy, because I feel like that'll be a chance for them to make that character much more interesting.
And he's got a mask in that movie, in the show, right?
Oh, he freaking better. That purple mask from the comics needs to come out.
I thought he was. I heard some sort of rumor that he wasn't going to be just a normal guy like he was in Civil War. I'm sure he's going to have a costume or something along those lines. Eric, what were your thoughts on Zemo as the main bad guy of the movie? Obviously, he was kind of relatable in the sense that he had a motive. It's not like, oh, I want to take over the world. He doesn't give a shit about that. He just wants to tear down the Avengers from within. It was kind of a cool motivation. I agree with Chris. I wish they had developed the character a bit more. But what were your thoughts on Zemo?
I really wanted to like Zemo. I really did. I liked the cerebral approach. I liked that he had a motive. I liked that he had a plan, because so many of the big Avengers movies, it's just, hey, guys, this guy's big, this guy's an alien, whatever, they're going to fight, it's going to be a throwdown. And he tried to kind of fight them mentally rather than go blow for blow with them. So I appreciated that, but at the same time, it's the same issue that a lot of, and I say Marvel, but even to an extent DC's fallen into the same issues of late. The villains are so underdeveloped.
Mm-hmm.
They're set dressing. They're there to antagonize a little bit and then get beat. And I felt the same with Zemo. I thought he was just my family was killed in Sokovia. Yeah, that works to an extent, but it loses its luster a little bit when earlier in the movie we meet the mom whose son was killed in Sokovia, and she didn't try to kill or manipulate any of the it's just, there's so much more potential. I agree with Chris. His character could have easily, I think he would have made a great Netflix Marvel villain character where there were multiple episodes that you could have built him through, really developed his backstory. But here it was just same thing with every Marvel villain not named Loki. He's just super underdeveloped, and he's put out there, and he's vanquished by the end of the movie, and it's almost like Hogan must pose.
Yeah,
the guy,
exactly.
There he goes. It's over at the end.
Exactly. I'm glad you brought up that scene from earlier on with the woman confronting Tony Stark backstage about her son dying in Sokovia. Because you're right, she's not like a super villain, but she's just like, listen, this is what you did. And she's just kind of putting it out there. She doesn't sue him or whatever. She's just telling him her story and his story of her son.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes him question his actions and, being in the superhero business and signing the Sokovia Accords. I thought that was really effective. She doesn't go so far as to be like, oh, let's take over the world, or let's kill the Avengers.
And she wasn't over the top with it either, which I appreciated. I mean, she could have been this bawling, screaming, hysterical character, and she wasn't. She was just very matter of fact, very demure. It fit. It worked well.
Exactly. Yeah, I thought her performance was great for the few minutes that we saw her for. Yeah, I agree. The more that you guys talk about it, it's like with Zemo, it's like what drew him to, okay, my wife and kids, or kid, whatever, and his dad, I think, died in the Sokovia fire, whatever, from Age of Ultron. And then he goes from that to being doing all this research with the stuff that came out from S.H.I.E.L.D. and then finding the old Hydra agents. It's like, how much fucking work did this guy go through just to get to the end game here? And he said that he had a lot of time. That's how he explained it. I don't know, I felt like that was kind of a lousy excuse, but I thought he was all right, though. I thought his performance was good. Any thoughts, Eric, on the return of Thunderbolt Ross in the movie? He plays a very minor role, but actually kind of an effective role in establishing the Sokovia Accords, and I think this was the first time we've seen him since the Incredible Hulk movie so many years ago.
I mean, he's there. Mm-hmm. He was there. He necessitated the Sokovia Accords part, but I didn't really... I had no investment in him at all. It was nice to see a little cameo. He pops up. He pops up in a couple of the movies, either as in video form or whatever. But yeah, he was there.
Yeah. What about you, Chris? Do you agree with Eric that it was kind of just there, Thunderbolt Ross?
Yeah, John Hurt served the purpose of being the government guy that was communicating with the Avengers, and in that respect, it's a good character to use because he's somebody we already know. So it's not just some faceless senator who's passing this information down to them. He wasn't intended to be a main part of the movie, so, he was just there in a hologram for a few minutes, and he's one of those characters that, he's useful in that he's not an outright villain, but he can be antagonistic with the Avengers. So the fact that he doesn't trust them, you understand that. Mm-hmm. From the previous interactions he's had with the Hulk alone, you get that. But, he's just a small part of the movie, and it was nice to see him, and it gives that connectivity a little bit more weight because it really does connect the Hulk to these movies, and it makes it feel like this is more of a lived-in world, like Tony was saying in the last episode. Having that little connective tissue between movies of these minor characters is what makes them feel like they are all in the same universe.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, especially since They don't bring back anyone else that was in the Hulk movie for future films, actor-wise, aside from him, which is cool.
Well, Martin Starr, the teacher from Spider-Man.
Right, obviously. I completely forgot about that. It's such a minor role, I totally forgot. But we just got done talking about it, too. But yeah, him as well, which is cool. Did they actually...
But there is something I want to point out. So the character that you guys mentioned, Alfre Woodard, she's the one who approaches Tony in the hallway and talks about her dead son.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she literally plays one of the main villains in the MCU show Luke Cage on Netflix.
I think we've talked about this before.
Like, I don't understand how this happened without somebody being like, hey, this might create a continuity issue. Because, like, they can't just say they're twin sisters. They have different last names. Yeah. Even though their first names are Mariah and Miriam. So it's like, they could be twin names. But they have different last names, and neither of them are supposed to be connected. So that was just a weird thing to me, because as soon as I saw her show up, I'm like, why do I know her from Marvel already? And then I watched Luke Cage, and I was just like, oh, Jesus, that's just weird.
That's a good point.
It's funny you said that, because Luke Cage is one of my favorite shows or one of my favorite projects that Marvel has done. I didn't even think about it. I didn't even put two and two together. So that's a good point, Chris.
I mean, it's not really an error, because the Netflix stuff, even though it's supposed to exist in the MCU, the movies don't really acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. That may change when Daredevil rights revert back to Marvel in about 6 months, because I've heard that the plan is to use Charlie Cox again, which I'm happy about because I love the Daredevil show. Mm-hmm. I would love to see them bring in Luke Cage, though. Like, I loved that show too, Erik. He did such a good job playing Luke Cage. And there's some great characters like Misty Knight that could really be great in some of these movies.
I'm surprised with the characters. Everyone, I mean, we've talked about this before, Chris, how they've had characters who played other people, like Peter's mom is like some random extra in she's the woman that Chris Evans, Captain America, makes out with in the first Captain America movie, right?
Yeah, same actress.
Yeah, I'm surprised that, it's fun that they use the same actors and actresses for certain stuff, but like usually with these movies, there's such a close attention to detail. It's like, oh, well, this character from the 2 seconds that you saw him in Iron Man is now in Far From Home. Like, you would think that there would be more connectivity, and they would like, oh, okay, that's the same woman, or they would just cast someone else completely different. It's not a big thing, but it is a pet peeve or whatever.
I mean, they could always just write in little jokes like, oh my God, I had no idea that Star-Lord's grandmother, who looks exactly like Star-Lord's mother, made out with Captain America. Like, yeah, they could make that a joke. That would be hilarious, but they won't.
No, yeah, that one could be retconned. The woman from Luke Cage probably won't be, and I mean, there's just no way that would be a villain. And then, unless she was lying, which she wasn't. So about her son.
No, she was. She was a government employee in Civil War.
Yeah, exactly. So probably not there. But on that same note, what I also wanted to ask you about, Chris, was Sharon Carter always supposed to be Peggy's niece dating back to Winter Soldier, or was that something they wrote in for this movie?
No, that's definitely something that was planned, and Cap going to her funeral was planned for that movie.
Oh, really? For Winter Soldier? Or for
yes,
Civil War?
Now, I don't know if it was filmed and if they used that footage here, or if they just filmed new footage of it. I can't remember what they said, but yes. And in the comics, she is also Peggy's niece and an actual love interest for Cap in the present-day timeline as well. So, like, when that happened, I was actually happy, because I was like, oh, they're going in that direction with Sharon. That's cool. Like, I like that actress, so that'll be interesting to see. And then that one kiss was all they had, and then he's like, oh, wait, I can go back in time and be with Peggy? Well, screw you, Sharon.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I'm going to go back to be with your aunt. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's got to, like, I just want to see one mid-credits scene where, like, an old Cap is introduced to a young Sharon, and he's, like, just awkward about it.
That would be great. Or they should do, if they do another show or something, I'm assuming Chris Evans is done permanently, but if they were to do a show or whatever, where they show Captain America living in the 40s with Peggy, or the 30s or whatever, back in his original timeline. And he's like, hey, I got to make a confession to you. I accidentally kissed your niece. And then they just had like this giant fight about it or something like that. Like, because he's just an honest guy, so he's not going to keep that from her. He's got to tell her the truth and tell her how fucking weird it was. Why did they even throw that kiss in there, Chris? Was there a point to that?
Well, I think at that point, they didn't have it planned that he was going to go back in time yet. Like, you know, these movies, even though they're planned pretty far in advance, little story details like Cap being the guy to go back and return the stones and then go with Peggy, that was developed during the writing of that movie. That wasn't in the cards when this movie was made. So I think they were actually planning for Sharon to be the love interest going forward, and then when the Russos changed their mind, they just ignored that.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, maybe they were going to bring her back until they figured out the time travel thing. I'm not sure.
I mean, the superhero stuff in the comics is like a big Tinder rotation. Like, so many of those people have been with each other over time that, you know, it is what it is. So
yeah. Erik, what were your thoughts on the beginning stages of the relationship between Wanda Maximoff and Vision in this movie? And what's the more random relationship between Scarlet Witch and Vision, or Natasha and Bruce Banner from Age of Ultron?
Oh, it's definitely Natasha and Bruce Banner. Like, I understand that he brings her a calming, or she brings him a calming effect, but yeah, that one just, I mean, they spent Avengers, like, I know they've never necessarily implied that there was a romantic relationship, but they got so close with Clint and Natasha that then all of a sudden come Ultron, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, Natasha and Banner. And then they allude to it in Ragnarok, but then we kind of touch on it when he's all upset that she died in Endgame, but there's all this time that's passed, and that one took me out. I like the chemistry between Vision and Wanda. It's definitely strange. You definitely sit and wonder what happened there, but I think it works strangely enough.
Yeah.
I'm imagining Vision's the one person who can't notice that Wanda's accent keeps dropping out every 5 seconds in the movie.
Yeah, it's definitely noticeable. We talked about that, I think, our Ultron review, how noticeable it is that she's gradually and quickly losing her accent with every movie that passes. It's also meant...
At this point, I think we're not even supposed to remember that she's from Sokovia.
Yeah, exactly.
Just move on.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't even been long enough where it's like, oh, she's Americanizing now. She has an American accent. It doesn't take like 6 months. Like, that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know, she gave an excuse for the accent in an interview where I said, well, that should have been in the movie. And she's like, she's becoming a spy, so she's working on hiding who she really is.
Okay.
And that's why the accent is like lessened from movie to movie and doesn't just disappear all at once.
That makes sense.
That's great. That's something that they definitely should put in there.
Yeah, they absolutely should have. And there could have been one line. All it would have taken was one line of Black Widow being like, your accent is coming along nicely, or something like that. Like, anything to indicate that it was part of spycraft. But, you know.
Just throw something to throw away that we all go, oh yeah, so that explains it.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you remember when Kofi Kingston dropped the Jamaican accent like 10 years ago and they had Triple H like acknowledge it? That's what it makes me think of when you say that. Like, they didn't just have him go from speaking Jamaican to just a regular American accent overnight. Like, they did, but they acknowledged the change. So that's what they should have done with this. I mean, it's cool that she acknowledged it, but it just wasn't on screen. Chris, sorry, go ahead, Erik.
No, I was just hearing. Yep.
So with this part, I was kind of confused on this. Chris, I'll ask you first. They reference that Tony and Pepper are taking a break. We never hear about that again. We see them together in Homecoming, where he actually proposes to her, and that's a year later after this. Obviously, there was something with her contract going on at this point. What was happening with that?
I think it was two things. I think it was scheduling, and I also think she was an ancillary character that they could afford not to use in a movie that was already kind of bloated.
Okay.
So, I mean, they didn't even need to acknowledge that they were on a break, but I think that might have been part of the contract thing where like, oh, well, if Gwyneth doesn't come back, at least we planted the seeds for a full-on breakup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just in case. Oh, yeah, I'm glad they did that. It just seemed odd they were back on the same page a year later without acknowledging any of the issues in Homecoming, but it's not that big of a deal. Final few questions. Go ahead, Eric.
I'm really happy that you guys brought that up, because there's a throwaway line from Tony when they mentioned the break from Pepper, and it blew my mind because I missed it the first 2 or 3 times I saw it. Mm-hmm. Where he mentions he was hoping the Accord, signing the Sokovia Accords, would help with the relationship. And I'm thinking to myself, if that's your motivation for handing over control of the Avengers to the government, you are way more off base than you are actually acting in this movie.
Yeah.
It's a little throwaway line, but I'm sitting there like, if that's really like any motivation whatsoever for the Accords, then you are sadly mistaken.
Was he talking about the relationship between him and Pepper, or the relationship between the government and the Avengers?
No, I thought it was right after he had just mentioned the break from Pepper. He's talking to Cap in the, I think it's after Cap gets busted with Bucky when Black Panther starts popping up for the first time.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe I totally just missed it, but there's a line in there. It's right after the Pepper talk, and I took it for he's hoping the Accords helps with the breakup with Pepper.
Huh, yeah, I didn't catch that. I'll have to rewatch that.
And like I said, maybe I'm off base and I just missed it, but I definitely heard something along those lines, and I thought it was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, that would explain a little bit. I wish they had gone more in depth with that, but yeah, that it is an interesting scene because I had forgotten that he had even mentioned a break when I first saw the movie, and then now just watching it back now, I'm like, that's odd because they never really hinted at those two having any issues. Even when they mentioned her in Age of Ultron a year earlier, they never said anything like that. But I mean, it's relationship marriage stuff. It's typical, but like I thought that we would get more with that than what we did. Final few plot points here. Eric, I'll start with you. Did you think the introduction, there was so much going on in this movie as we already established. Do you think the introduction of the Black Panther character and Spider-Man were rushed? Do you think they could have done them better? Like we see Black Panther's dad for maybe like a minute before he gets blown away in the bomb at the conference. It's like, wow, it's impactful because his dad just died in front of him. But like they couldn't have had the guy in the show, in the movie for like 20 more minutes? I don't know. And what were your thoughts on the introductions of Spider-Man and Black Panther in the film?
Spider-Man I don't think was necessary. I think we could have held off on Spider-Man until Homecoming. I thought we know his story. We know who he is. We know it's a big deal. I know you're trying to sell some toys and some merchandise here and appeal to kids and make it a bigger blockbuster movie. But I don't think he added anything to the film. If anything, it's weird because Tony tells, or part of Tony's motivation for signing the Accords is the fact that Alfred Woodward's son is killed in Sokovia, a teenager, that he was responsible for the death of, or the Avengers were. And then he told, flying over to New York, he's like, hey, teenager, come here and help me fight this battle against the other Avengers. So it's like, I feel like it could have been done without. Black Panther, if they would have kept the movie a smaller Captain America movie, that could have been the motivation. You could have still called it Captain America Civil War. It could have been a fight between Avengers, Black Panther, Captain America, with Black Panther being the antagonist, just to fight Captain America because he holds Bucky responsible for the death of his dad. I don't have a problem with Black Panther being used in there. I probably would have helped if we would have had his dad around a little bit more to establish more of an emotional connection, but as it is, I didn't have a problem with Black Panther. I had Spider-Man, I just didn't think it was necessary.
Yeah, I think they probably wanted to do service to the comics because Spider-Man was involved in that, I know, and that's probably why they wanted him a part of this, but I don't know. I mean, we Chris and I have talked about Homecoming before, and I think they did a good job of recapping Civil War and Homecoming. I thought that was really well done, but they could have just introduced him there. I don't know if he had to be in this movie. I mean, he was good. I liked his involvement in the movie, but I just don't know if it was necessary. But I agree on the Black Panther stuff, though. I think it worked because, he thinks that Bucky killed his dad. And like I said, you kind of get this triple threat storyline with Captain America and Black Panther and Captain America defending Bucky, defending the Winter Soldier, and the Winter Soldier not being the one who did it, blah, blah, blah. I thought that was great. But what about you, Chris? What were your thoughts on the introductions of Black Panther and Spider-Man into the MCU in this film?
I mean, I agree with Erik that Spider-Man wasn't necessary, but I enjoyed the way Tom Holland played him so much that I liked the inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And they needed to even out the teams. So they were like, who's a hero we can use? Well, we're going to bring in Spider-Man anyway, so let's just use him there. Tony's motivation for getting him was a little weird, but at the same time, I could also see it as like, well, this is a young man who's clearly going to do this superhero thing anyway, so maybe I can mentor him a little bit, but bringing him to a fight with a bunch of overpowered heroes right away was kind of weird. As far as Black Panther goes, I like that he was brought in and he's already a badass, and like we don't need an origin story on every hero. Like sometimes people can be brought in and they're already existing as that person, and then his solo movie went into his history enough to where that serves as both an origin story and not an origin story because he's already the Black Panther when the movie starts. Mm-hmm. So I felt like them bringing him in and using him in the way that they did was good because it made me want to see more of the character, and it made me excited for the solo Black Panther movie. So as like an introduction and a tease for what's to come with the character, I thought they did a good job with Black Panther. As far as like how fast his dad was killed, I mean, that's just a victim of this once again being a bloated movie that has to move from point to point in the story very quickly. So one thing that I thought was interesting, though, was they seemed to indicate that there was some kind of previous relationship, not romantic, but like a knowledge of who they were between Natasha and Black Panther. And I wish they would have paid that off a little better in the Black Panther solo movie. Like, clearly they knew each other from something before.
Yeah. And
I would have been interested to find out what that was, but we'll probably never know now since, we're probably going to see the last of Black Widow in her movie.
Didn't Black Widow have a history with the Winter Soldier too? She's like, remember me? But what else would she be talking about? Winter Soldier? Was that what she was talking about or something else?
Well, she mentions in Winter Soldier that she'd had an interaction with him, that he took out somebody she was trying to protect, and that in order to kill that guy, he had to shoot through her to do it.
Okay.
So, like, that's supposed to establish their relationship. But in the comics, he actually was one of the people who helped train her. So,
okay.
I think that maybe that line was more of an Easter egg than something they were planning on paying off when she's like, do you even recognize me? Like,
yeah.
I think that's them saying, like, yes, these characters have a much deeper history in the comics. We're just not going to go into that in the movies, which is fine. I mean, you can't have these characters all be connected in a million different ways from their previous lives. So
yeah.
It was a fun little line for the people that know their history, and for anyone that doesn't, it just makes it sound like she's referencing what she was talking about in the Winter Soldier movie.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It would have been nice to have got more clarification, but it's not a big deal, and like you said, it's not everything has to be connected a million different ways. One issue that I had with the Spider-Man thing that I wrote down in my notes here that I didn't really understand is that one of Tony's big, character plot points, whatever, in this film, as I mentioned earlier, was that, he finds out about that, the kid dying in Sokovia, Charles Spencer, I forgot exactly what his name was. And then he's like, oh man, we killed a kid over there. Like, we got to sign these accords. We got to be held accountable, held under control, blah, blah, blah. Can't kill any more kids. And then he recruits fucking Peter Parker to come to the Civil War battle. And he's putting his life in danger. And the kid's a sophomore in high school. And he obviously has a relationship with him. And they obviously become closer in Homecoming and whatever. It just seems strange, though, after having this whole thing with that Spencer kid dying, then he would put, Peter Parker in danger. And granted, Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and he knows he has powers and he can hold his own. But what if something happened to Peter Parker here and he just died? It wouldn't be kind of the same thing. It's a little strange. But kind of talking about that airport battle, Erik, do you think it should have been longer than it was? I mean, this whole movie was called Civil War, but we only get like 15 minutes of it, if that, towards the end of the movie. Were you hoping more from that airport battle?
Honestly, no. And it's just based off of the trailer footage and everything that came before it. If you watch any of the trailers, the clips, when you're watching that movie, that battle is the primary battle. You see some of the Captain America Iron Man fight from the end, but that's it. So when you go in and you see that, okay, midway through the movie, we have the airport battle and we're watching what's going down, and you're like, wait a minute, this is based off of everything I've seen so far. They're not going to do this again. This is it.
Yeah.
So I was hoping for more. Yeah, I was hoping that for a movie called Civil War, most of the movie would be them fighting, kind of like Batman versus Superman. You wait 2 hours to get through it, and then it's a 15, 20-minute battle, and that's the end.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it kind of was what it was.
Yeah. What about you,
I
Chris?
loved it. It was a great scene. The whole scene was awesome, but it could have gone longer. There could have been more.
Yeah, I think that's just a general criticism of the movie. It was a great scene. I enjoyed it for as long as it lasted, but it definitely, for a movie called Civil War, you would expect the movie, maybe not to be the entire movie for it to be the war, but I was expecting a little more than just 15 minutes or so. I know they got to have the build-up, but anyway. Chris, what were your thoughts on the Civil War aspect of the Civil War movie?
Well, I actually admired this movie for doing something that I don't think a lot of people expected, and that's that they put the biggest battle 2/3 through the movie, and then they made the final battle, which is normally where a city gets destroyed, 3 guys in a bunker.
That was cool.
And
yeah.
That I felt like, for the storytelling purposes, it made it so much more personal between those 3 characters, between, like, Iron Man clearly respects Steve, but there's some tension there.
Mm-hmm.
But he hates Bucky. Cap loves Bucky and likes Iron Man. And so every one of them has feelings about the other one that are conflicting. And really, this is those 3 actors' movie. Like, it might be called Civil War, and there might be a million other people in it, but when it comes down to it, this is a Cap, Iron Man, Bucky story. So I did admire the movie for actually, like, they threw everything in the kitchen sink at you in 15 minutes with the airport fight, and then the final fight is just, this visceral beatdown between 3 of the most powerful people in the MCU at this point. So I actually kind of enjoyed how they set everything up, and if the airport battle had gone on longer, I don't think it necessarily would have made the overall movie better, but it would have just been that much more exciting, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it was already a long, bloated movie, so they gave enough for everyone to get their spots in. Like, it felt like a 10-man tag match where everybody tags in for 30 seconds, hits a signature move, tags out. We got a couple of good one-liners. We got a couple of interesting interactions from people who've never met before. Like, the funny little exchange between Hawkeye and Black Panther, or Spider-Man, or Spider-Man marking out over Bucky's metal arm.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff puts a smile on my face. So I enjoyed both battles, but I just thought this movie took a really interesting decision in putting the big battle earlier in the movie than I think most people expected, and then making the final battle just so much more personal.
No, that's a good point. That's a very good point. I would have liked the Civil War stuff to last a little bit longer, but it took a turn that we weren't expecting with that final triple threat match of sorts.
Again, this is why it should have been more than one movie.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a 2-parter like Infinity War. Like they were very smart to make Infinity War 2 parts with Endgame. and not cramming it into one for obvious reasons. And this is kind of the same thing. But yeah, no, I like the ending a lot. I like that the triple threat match of sorts between Bucky, Steve, and Tony. I thought that was very well done. But yeah, no, this was cool. And at the end, they have the rogue members of the Avengers in jail, and then you have like Tony there to confront each of them. And then Ant-Man's just kind of sort of there. I completely forgot about Ant-Man, but he's there, and he has a few funny moments, but again, not overly necessary. Especially after he just... the same thing, like with the Peter Parker thing that I mentioned earlier. He says in Ant-Man, he's like, oh, I can't go back to jail. I can't go back to jail. I got to see my kid. Well, I got to see Cassie. And then he risks going back to jail by going against Tony Stark. It's just weird. But it was funny.
I think his love for Captain America is kind of a good excuse, though.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, he's like, yes, sir. Yeah,
like
that was great.
Yeah, Sam shows up and he's like, hey, Captain America needs your help. It makes sense that Ant-Man would be like, yes, where do I go? Like that actually tracks.
That's fine. Yeah, that's a fine way to explain it away. I don't know if you picked up on this, but when Tony goes to the jail cell and Hawkeye's like, oh, the Futurist is here or whatever. That's a shot at his old album. I don't know if you probably picked up on that, but...
Yeah, and Downey's reaction is genuine.
Yeah, it's so funny. Man, I thought that was great. But yeah, no, this was really well done. That's pretty much it. We kind of talked about it all. We talked about, or didn't mention, War Machine, Rhodey, the injury that he suffers, and then it kind of puts things in perspective for everybody. And he's got to learn how to walk again and all this other stuff. He's kind of paralyzed from the waist down. The whole thing was great. I thought this was a really well done movie. We all have our qualms about the movie. There's some criticisms, but overall, I thought it worked. And I like how it kind of ends on an unsatisfying conclusion. They don't just make up. They're like, oh, we're the Avengers again. Everyone goes their separate ways. We don't see Captain America again until Infinity War when he emerges from the shadows. So the Avengers are broken, Matt Hardy style. I thought this was great. I thought they ended it on a very good note, despite my issues from earlier on in the film. So we'll end it off with this. Final thoughts. Chris, I'll start with you. Final 2 cents on Captain America: Civil War.
I mean, it's a solid entry. It's not the best Marvel movie. It's definitely nowhere near being the worst. I liked it. I can put it on whenever I want and, do other stuff while this is on in the background and tune in and be entertained for 5 minutes. But the one thing I think this movie did really, really well was the way it cast new characters that we hadn't seen before. Mm-hmm. So, like, Martin Freeman as Everett Ross, the CIA guy, and he's a big part of the Black Panther comics, so it made sense for him to be in the Black Panther movie, too. But I liked how he was introduced, but not overly used to where you don't know if he's going to be an important character in the future or not.
Yeah.
Hope Davis as Tony's mom was good casting because she's a good actress. But... we have yet another Community cameo in this movie too. Jim Rash, the guy who plays the dean in Community, was in the scene with Tony in the beginning at the college where he's like, is some of that funding available for the teachers?
Yeah, that was funny.
So yeah, it's a good movie. It's definitely entertaining. It just, it has some problems from being bloated. This should have been a bigger storyline that I think they tried too hard to cram into one movie instead of giving it the long arc that it deserved. Mm-hmm. But, hindsight's 2020, and there are multiple Civil War storylines in the comics. It happens more than once when heroes team up against other heroes. So they could easily do an extended version of this later. We just won't have the benefit of having Cap and Iron Man and whoever else is gone by that point.
Yeah, no, I think overall, I enjoyed it. I am of the mindset, kind of with both of you guys, where I thought it was a very good movie. I would put it nowhere near the bottom, but it is in a certain way. They kind of missed the boat with a few different things, but again, it is a big team-up movie. I should have probably expected that, but it was still very good on the whole. And I agree, the introduction to some of the new characters, I did have some criticisms of certain characters, but I think overall they did a very good job. There was far more good than bad with this movie, and I agree with Chris that it's a movie that you could put on in the background and just enjoy for 5 minutes because there really isn't a dull scene for the most part. Erik, I know you're kind of a different point of view where you started out really, really liking it, You've seen it more times over the years. Just recently, and you're like, maybe not exactly what I was hoping for. What are your overall thoughts in the movie? And I'm curious to hear where you would rank it overall in the MCU.
So, I guess there's two ways of looking. As if you take it on face value for what it is, it's a big summer blockbuster movie. I enjoyed it. It's easy to, you don't have to think too much, which is always fun. When you're just, like Chris said, you're just looking to put something on, you can watch it, you can turn away from it, you kind of pick up exactly where you're at, and you can move on with it. It's fine. Mm-hmm. It's one of those movies that had such huge aspirations and expectations that it was almost impossible to live up to. I think execution of it was fine. It's a beautiful Marvel movie, like most of them are. The battles are excellent, but again, it falls short story-wise. Which, if you watch every one of these Marvel team-up movies since the Avengers, the original Avengers paid so close attention to detail that it's almost perfect and flawless. Mm-hmm. You had great storytellers attached that were paying attention to what they were doing. Since then, you start seeing little details lose their way throughout. And I thought Civil War was one of those movies that was the first one where, even in the theater, you sit up and you go, wait a minute, okay, I'm losing you on that one. There's some stuff with Tony's development that didn't hit. There's stuff with Cap's character where you're kind of like, that's off-brand a little bit. But as a whole, if you go in knowing what you're getting, if you go in knowing this is going to be a huge Marvel extravaganza, it's perfectly fine. Yeah. And I do think that, like Chris has pointed out, there are so many unique, different developments and risks that they took, including the Civil War battle right in the middle of the movie, that it's admirable. Mm-hmm. As far as where it lands, to me, I put it probably somewhere in the middle of the pack. I would say it's not the top tier, which is like kind of reserved for like your Ragnaroks and Black Panther and the original Avengers, and Winter Soldier, which I think is the best thing that Marvel's done. Mm-hmm. I'd probably put it in the next level down, just a little step below, and it's more or less because of the storyline threads that kind of either go undeveloped or underdeveloped or just ignored totally, like Sharon Carter being this pretty important part of the first act and then just gone.
Yeah, we never see her again, I think. I think that's the last appearance that we see of her, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a picture of her in, I think it's Endgame, where they explain that she was snapped, but that's it.
Oh, okay.
Even when everybody comes back at the end, including the big team up of all the women, she's nowhere to be found.
She will be in one of the upcoming TV series, if I'm not mistaken.
Possibly, I think I heard that too,
Black Panther,
and that would be great.
Possibly the Winter Soldier series, which would make sense.
That would make sense, yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm hoping to see more of her, and hopefully they bring back more characters. Sorry, Eric, was there more?
No, that's it.
But, I completely agree. I completely agree with both of you guys' thoughts in the film. Overall, it was a great piece of business. I do agree, and Eric, you just mentioned it there. Would you agree, Chris, that it would... it's tough to say. That Winter Soldier's number one. For Captain America movies alone, Winter Soldier's 1. I would put this at 2, and then the first one at 3. I like the first one. I'm not in love with it as much as I am this movie. And I don't love this movie, but I think it's better than the first. Real quickly, Chris, where would you rank the 3 movies for Captain America?
I mean, yeah, I'd put Winter Soldier at number 1. I have such a soft spot for the first Captain America that, like, this movie and that movie are so different.
Yep.
That it is hard to compare. I'm like, really, all 3 Captain America movies are very different movies. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'd probably put this one at 3 and the first one at 2. But it's it depends on the day of the week as to how I would rank them.
Yeah, I think it changes on the day. Would you agree, Eric? Winter Soldier 1, you already said. Civil War 2 or Civil War 3?
I'm like Chris. I have a soft spot for the first one. I enjoyed what they did with the first one. It had heart, where those early Marvel movies had heart to it before they became, and a lot of them still do, but even more so that movie in particular. I mean, it's not as rewatchable as Civil War. At least I don't think so. I think you can put Civil War on like we've covered it. You just put it on and you can watch it without having to invest much in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I would go Winter Soldier, then the first one, and then Civil War.
Yeah. You really can't go wrong with any three. Even if someone said Civil War is a number one, I wouldn't be like, oh, that's a blasphemous opinion. Like, they're all great movies. I think we can all agree that Winter Soldier is the best of the bunch. It's just a fantastic film. But, that's going to do it. Civil War discussion here today for Captain America, latest installment in the MCU Rewatch Review series. Erik, thanks so much, man, for coming on the show. We appreciate it. I know we've been trying to work this out for a while now, so I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But before I let you go, where can people find you? I know you're on the Twitter machine at Erik Beaston. On Bleacher Report, of course, do great work there. Anything else you'd like to share before we ride off into the sunset here?
Nope, that's about it. You guys covered it well. It's all Bleacher Report on Twitter, where everybody can pay attention and troll my opinion. Perfect.
And of course, Chris, you're on the Bleacher Reports as well, at BR_Doctor on the Twitter machine. Always do a great, we always do have a great time here on the show discussing Marvel, and I'm looking forward to talking. I don't know, I'm losing my timeline here. Then the next movie is Doctor Strange. So that's coming up in the next episode. But Chris, thank you as well for joining us as always.
Oh, yeah, this was great.
This is awesome. Erik, thank you. Chris, thank you. Have a great one, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep, you too.
All right, adios.
Mm-hmm.